Most seniors are missing at least 3 of these 5 supplements, and it's silently destroying muscle balance and brain energy. No pain, no warning, just faster aging until today. Much of what we call normal aging is not aging at all, it's accelerated aging, and it happens quietly year after year because the body is missing small but essential biological supports. I've watched patients do everything right. They take their prescriptions, they follow their doctor's advice. Their lab work looks acceptable, and yet every year they feel weaker, slower, less steady, less like themselves. Not because of a sudden disease, but because the systems that protect muscle, brain, and energy are slowly starving. This idea was understood deeply by Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara, one of the longest practicing physicians in modern history. He lived and worked past 100 years old, and his philosophy was simple but powerful. The body doesn't break down from one big failure. It breaks down when small deficiencies are ignored for too long. He used an analogy I've never forgotten. A machine doesn't fail from one broken part. It fails when many small supports wear out together. That's exactly how accelerated aging works. It doesn't announce itself with a diagnosis. It shows up quietly, as muscle loss that feels inevitable, fatigue that never fully lifts, brain fog you blame on sleep, balance issues you brush off as clumsiness, and recovery that takes days instead of hours. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just a slow erosion of function. And here's where modern medicine often misses the mark. We've become very good at treating disease, but longevity, real longevity, is not about avoiding disease alone. As Dr. Peter Attia emphasizes, the goal is preserving function and resilience, the ability to walk confidently, think clearly, get up from the floor, and live independently, not just survive. That requires signals, nutrients, biological inputs that aging bodies no longer absorb, produce, or regulate the way they once did. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 commonly missed supplements that, when absent after 60, quietly compound aging signals across muscle, brain, and metabolism. Individually, each one matters. Together, they determine whether aging slows or accelerates. We'll start with foundational gaps many people don't even realize they have. And we'll finish with the most overlooked aging accelerator of all, the one that makes people feel old even when every test says they're fine. Listen closely. Aging doesn't speed up overnight. It accelerates silently when key supports are missing. Supplement number 5, magnesium, the energy and relaxation mineral. By the time someone reaches their 60s, the body is no longer running on youthful efficiency. The systems that once produced energy smoothly begin to hesitate. Muscles don't release the way they used to. Sleep becomes lighter, more fragmented. The nervous system stays just a little too alert, even at night. Magnesium sits quietly at the center of all of this. It is involved in hundreds of reactions in the body, but one role matters more than almost any other as we age: energy production. Magnesium is required to activate ATP, the molecule every cell uses as fuel. Without enough magnesium, energy exists on paper, but not in practice. This is why fatigue in older adults often feels strange. It isn't the exhaustion of doing too much. It's the weariness of an engine that never quite catches. Magnesium also governs muscle relaxation and nerve signaling. When levels fall, muscles tighten instead of releasing. Nerves fire too easily. The body loses its ability to fully downshift. Over time, this shows up as nighttime cramps, stiffness on waking, restless sleep, and a constant sense that the body is on edge. Absorption of magnesium declines steadily with age. At the same time, losses increase. Common medications, stress hormones, and even low-grade inflammation quietly drain magnesium stores faster than they can be replaced. The analogy that fits best is mechanical. Magnesium functions like a spark plug. The engine may turn, fuel may be present, but without that spark, nothing runs smoothly. Everything feels strained, inefficient, and noisy. What makes this deficiency particularly deceptive is how symptoms cluster. Poor sleep doesn't arrive alone. Muscle tightness doesn't arrive alone. Fatigue doesn't arrive alone. They appear together, reinforcing one another, and are often mislabeled as just getting older. The protocol is precise, not aggressive. A dose of 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate aligns best with aging physiology. Taken in the evening, away from calcium, it supports both neuromuscular relaxation and sleep architecture. Dosage tolerance varies, and digestion provides early feedback. When magnesium is restored, the body doesn't become younger, it becomes less strained. Energy production stabilizes, muscles release instead of gripping, sleep deepens. The nervous system finally lowers its guard. Aging slows not because something new was added, but because a missing support was quietly returned. And this is only the beginning. The next signal affects strength, balance, and resilience in a way many people never connect to aging until it's already compromised. If these small missing signals are starting to make sense, stay connected here. This channel focuses on preserving strength, clarity, and independence as the body ages. Subscribing keeps you ahead of silent decline. Supplement number 4, vitamin D, the muscle-bone signal. Vitamin D has been misunderstood for decades. It's often spoken about as if its job begins and ends with bones, as though its only purpose is preventing fractures or osteoporosis. That narrow view has quietly cost many older adults their strength, balance, and resilience. Vitamin D functions more like a signal than a vitamin. Inside the body, it behaves as a hormone, binding to receptors in muscle tissue, the immune system, and even the brain. It helps muscles contract with precision. It helps nerves communicate clearly. It helps the immune system distinguish between true threats and harmless background noise. When vitamin D is insufficient, these systems don't fail dramatically. They simply lose sharpness. One of the most consistent changes with aging is the body's declining ability to make vitamin D from sunlight. Skin that once produced ample amounts now generates a fraction of what it did decades earlier, even with the same sun exposure. At the same time spent outdoors often decreases, and absorption becomes less reliable. The result is subtle but powerful. Muscles lose responsiveness. Balance becomes less automatic. Reaction time slows. The risk of falling increases quietly, even in people with strong bones and no pain. Strength fades not because muscles disappear overnight, but because the signal telling them how to function weakens. The best analogy is a control dial. Vitamin D acts like the volume knob between muscle and bone, nerve and muscle, balance and movement. When that knob is turned down, communication doesn't stop. It just becomes faint and unreliable. This is why someone can feel unsteady without feeling sick, why stairs feel more demanding, why confidence in movement erodes before any injury occurs. The system is still intact, but it's underpowered. The protocol respects biology rather than overwhelming it. An intake of 1,000 to 2,000 IU daily, adjusted to blood levels, supports signaling without excess. Taken with a fat-containing meal, absorption improves significantly. Levels shift with age, season, and health status, which is why reassessment becomes more important after 65. When vitamin D signaling is restored, the change is rarely dramatic. It's steadier footing, more reliable strength, a quieter immune system, movements that feel coordinated again. Aging accelerates when communication breaks down inside the body. Vitamin D slows that process by turning the signal back up. But there is another force that quietly accelerates aging even when pain is absent. Labs look acceptable, and movement is still possible. It works slowly, persistently, and system-wide. That force is inflammation, and it comes next. What most people never realize is that even after inflammation is reduced and basic nutrient gaps are addressed, aging can still accelerate from a deeper, quieter failure. This is the point where people say, "I eat reasonably well and my labs look fine and nothing is technically wrong," yet strength continues to slip away and energy never quite returns. The problem is not a lack of fuel, it is a loss of reserve. Cells in a younger body operate with margin. They have buffers. They can respond to sudden demands without strain. With age, that margin narrows. Tasks that once required little effort begin to feel expensive. Muscles tire faster. Concentration drains more quickly. Recovery becomes unpredictable. This is not because the system is broken, but because it is operating without backup. Creatine sits at the center of this issue. At the cellular level, energy is consumed in bursts, not smooth lines. Standing up, catching your balance, lifting an object, even forming a thought all require rapid spikes in energy. ATP supplies that energy, but ATP itself is fleeting. It must be regenerated constantly, and that regeneration depends heavily on creatine. In younger adults, creatine is abundant. The body makes more of it, muscles store more of it, and dietary intake tends to be higher. With age, all three decline simultaneously. Production slows, storage capacity shrinks as muscle mass decreases. Intake drops as appetite and protein consumption fall. The result is not dramatic weakness, but a subtle inability to meet moment-to-moment energy demands. This is why fatigue in older adults often feels disproportionate. Not overwhelming, but persistent. Not incapacitating, but limiting. The body is forced to operate closer to its ceiling, leaving no margin for stress, illness, or exertion. Creatine functions like a reserve tank. When demand rises suddenly, it fills the gap. Without it, the system falters under pressure. The effect extends beyond muscle. The brain is one of the most energy-demanding organs in the body. Mental fatigue, slower processing, and that end-of-day cognitive drain often reflect the same issue: energy recycling that cannot keep pace. Restoring creatine does not create excess energy. It restores reliability. What follows is often described not as feeling stronger, but as feeling steadier. Tasks require less conscious effort. Fatigue arrives later. Recovery feels proportional again. This stability matters enormously with age, because instability is what leads to injury, loss of confidence, and withdrawal from activity. Yet even with cellular energy buffering restored, there is a final signal that determines whether the body maintains its physical structure or quietly dismantles it. That signal is protein. Aging muscle behaves very differently from young muscle. It becomes resistant to stimulation. The same protein intake that once maintained tissue no longer sends a strong enough message. This phenomenon, known as anabolic resistance, means muscle requires clearer, more robust amino acid signaling just to stay where it is. When that signal weakens, the body adapts in a way that makes biological sense but feels disastrous functionally. Muscle tissue is metabolically expensive. If it is not clearly needed and clearly supported, the body repurposes it. This process does not feel like loss at first. It feels like softness, weakness, reduced endurance, and diminished balance. Protein intake often declines for reasons that seem reasonable. Meals become smaller. Digestion feels slower. Heavy foods lose appeal. Over time, protein is distributed thinly across the day or skipped entirely in the morning. From a signaling perspective, this is catastrophic. The muscle never receives a clear message to stay. Muscle operates on a simple biological logic. It is maintained when it is used and fed. Remove either signal and loss accelerates. Remove both and decline becomes rapid. This is why muscle loss can occur even in people who remain active. Activity without adequate protein is an incomplete message. Adequate protein does not mean excess. It means enough in a single sitting to cross the threshold that aging muscle requires. Without reaching that threshold, the body remains in a state of quiet breakdown, using muscle tissue to meet daily needs. The consequences extend far beyond appearance or strength. Muscle is essential for glucose regulation, joint protection, balance, and metabolic stability. Its loss increases fall risk, insulin resistance, and frailty. It is not a cosmetic issue. It is a survival issue. When protein signaling is restored, changes accumulate slowly but decisively. Muscle loss decelerates. Strength stabilizes. Balance improves indirectly because the musculoskeletal system regains integrity. Independence lasts longer, not through force, but through preservation. This is why protein sits above all other interventions, not because it is dramatic, but because it is foundational. It determines whether the body builds, maintains, or dismantles itself. Together, creatine and protein address the deepest accelerators of aging. One restores cellular energy reserve. The other restores structural signaling. Without them, even the best nutrition plan operates on borrowed time. With them, the body regains margin. Aging does not feel sudden when these systems fail. It feels gradual, confusing, and frustrating. Restoring these signals does not turn back time. It slows the rate at which time takes things away. That distinction is everything. What remains now is perspective. Understanding how these supports work together, not as isolated fixes, but as quiet protectors of strength, balance, clarity, and dignity over the long arc of aging. Aging is often treated as something sudden and unavoidable, as if strength, balance, and clarity simply disappear at a certain age. But after decades of observing how people actually age, a quieter truth becomes clear. Decline rarely comes from one dramatic event. It comes from small supports fading away, slowly enough that the body adapts until it no longer can. This perspective echoes the thinking of Dr. Shigeki Hinohara, who believed that aging accelerates when subtle changes are ignored year after year. He often emphasized that longevity is not protected by a single intervention, but by many small systems working together. When even a few of those systems weaken, the entire structure becomes less stable. What we call normal aging often begins long before any diagnosis appears. Muscle loss starts before weakness is obvious. Balance declines before a fall ever happens. Mental clarity fades before anything registers as abnormal. These changes feel personal, but they are biological. They reflect a body that no longer receives the same signals it once did. Modern medicine excels at treating disease, but aging is not a disease. It is a gradual loss of resilience. This is where the idea emphasized by Dr. Peter Attia becomes critical. Longevity is not defined by the absence of illness, but by the preservation of function. Strength, balance, cognition, and recovery are the currencies that determine independence. The supplements discussed earlier are often misunderstood because they are viewed as additions. In reality, they act more like restorations. Magnesium helps a nervous system that no longer relaxes easily. Vitamin D restores communication between muscle, bone, and balance. Omega-3s quiet the background inflammation that slowly erodes tissue. Creatine rebuilds energy reserve so cells can meet demand without strain. Protein delivers the signal that muscle is still needed and should be preserved. Individually, each support matters. Together, they determine whether the body maintains its structure or quietly dismantles it. None of them replace movement, nourishment, or purpose. They simply allow those efforts to work again. Aging feels harsher when the body is forced to compensate constantly. When reserves are low, even ordinary tasks become taxing. Recovery stretches out. Confidence erodes. These changes are often mistaken for inevitability, when they are actually signals of missing support. The most important shift is understanding that aging does not suddenly take things away. It accelerates quietly when key signals fade. When those signals are restored, aging does not stop, but it slows in a meaningful way. That slowdown is the difference between walking cautiously and walking confidently, between managing daily life and avoiding it, between feeling fragile and feeling capable. The body does not demand perfection. It responds to consistency and adequacy. When small supports are present, systems cooperate. When they disappear, decline becomes the default. Aging well is not about resisting time. It is about maintaining the foundations that allow time to pass without stripping away function and dignity. And that, more than anything else, is what makes aging feel manageable again.